Welcome into Rounding the Bases.
Round the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg. It's around the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Rounding the Bases, presented by Community America Credit Union, invested in you. This episode is coming out in March, so we're just rolling along. That means I'm getting closer to opening day in baseball. That's certainly exciting. And the new book came out last month, Small Ball, Big Dream. So a lot of fun stuff going on. And I've got some other things going on, some programs and some things I'm working on in the future. And actually, I think my guest is a little bit related to that, in the sense that she's doing some really big things. And I think a lot of unique things that'll inspire so many of you that are listening today. Before I get to her, let's do a quick shout out to my friends at Chief of Staff Kansas City. You can be in Kansas City, you can be where my guest is in Chicago, anywhere around the country, whatever it is. If you are looking for a job, if you're looking to hire someone, if you're looking for a good resource, I highly recommend that you check them out. I partner with them on so many things because of their belief in people and culture. chiefofstaffkc.com, making connections that matter. I made a great connection this baseball offseason for me back in, I think it was January. And I love these connections because they lead to really good guests and great people. And so today I'm rounding the bases. I'm joined by a guest who lives life full out. Her name is LeeAnn Webster, a recovering attorney turned coach and international keynote speaker who has made it her mission to ensure your future is bigger than the past. As creator of the No Regrets formula, she guides accomplished leaders towards the big goals that really matter, personally and professionally, empowering them to kick passive existence to the curb so purposeful living can prevail. That's all you need to know about LeeAnn, but not really. There's so much more. LeeAnn, how are you?
I'm doing awesome, thanks. How are you?
I'm great. And when I met you through Michelle Villalobos, who will be a future guest, by the way, on this podcast. She is on our list. She knows that. And she's a master at building amazing things and a master of being around great people like yourself. And I knew right when I met you, as a virtual conference seminar retreat, that I had to have you on because your energy is just incredible. And I mean, look, you can be all bluster and, be loud. And by the way, having great energy doesn't have to be being loud either, but you have an incredible energy to you, and it shows in your work and your interest in people, your genuine interest. So that just my observation to everybody listening. But have you always been that way? Have you always been a high energy giver?
I feel like I've always been a very happy person. So I've always been like, okay, let's just roll with it. Let's see what's going on. And that probably took effect a little more into college. I think when I was younger, as we often are when we were young and awkward in middle school and high school and all that, I was finding my way. And so I kind of stepped into my own in college.
Well, you have, my goodness, there's so many things we could talk about. And I will tell you that my executive producer and assistant, Ashley, who you met on that retreat, she was like, I had so much fun researching LeeAnn because there's so much good stuff. And you just have I, as a podcast host, you always hope that somebody has like a fun little story or two that you can throw into the mix. Because I think for me, as a storyteller, it shows personality. It goes beyond, the bio. And you got so many of them. So let's just start with this recovering attorney. At what point was that the dream? And then at what point did that not become the dream?
Well, it's really interesting. So it was not always the dream. Some people are like, oh, ever since I was young, I wanted to be an attorney. Like I never have had that. But what I have had is very specific moments in time where somebody has stepped in and kind of seen me in a different way. And they've said something seemingly innocuous and it's shifted my path. And that happened in law school or in college. I was in a media law class. I'm a journalism major and at Ohio University, go Bobcats. And my professor, we would talk often, and he said one day, you're going to go to law school. And I was like, I'm going to law school. Why do you think that? And he's like, you're smart enough. He just encouraged me. And so I was like, oh my God, I guess I could do that. So off I went to law school. And part of what was attractive to me was I felt like I've always been very good at advocating for people or figuring things out. And so when I figure something out, then I try to teach other people how to figure it out. And I felt like law kind of would give me that way to do it. Well, then I went to law school and I started practicing law, and I was like, oh, snap, this is not fun. Like,
I don't like this.
I don't like this. And that led to a whole curve. I decided to try to do entertainment law. So I moved from Ohio to LA. And then I realized I just didn't want to practice law at all. And I ended up going into sales and a whole other path. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting because even at that point, clearly you said, okay, I'm not interested in this, but well, I'll try something else related to it. It's almost like you feel an obligation, don't you? I mean, forget about the investment in law school or whatever that was, but it just feels like you start to go down a path. And at least in my mind, I think like it must feel at the time like, well, wait, if I leave this now, I'm a failure, versus saying, wait a minute, let's go do something else that maybe it's not a failure to find out that that's not something you liked.
100%. Well, and I think that this happens to all of us, especially for women. We get really tied up in our identity. I'm a lawyer. I spent 3 years and a lot of money and a lot of energy becoming a lawyer, and it's a respected profession, and I'm the first lawyer in my family. And so how could I walk away from that? And yet for me, I was like, well, but I don't like it. So to me, I've always put a premium on what is something that's going to make my heart sing, and what's something where I feel like I'm making an impact. And I didn't feel like in the role of being a lawyer that I was doing that. So I thought, well, I can take this experience and pivot a little bit and do something else that will help my heart to sing and help me make a little bit more of an impact that I want to make.
But you didn't find that right away, did you? Or did you?
Oh, Joel, it's been such a journey.
That's the beauty of it.
I did. Let's see. I did court reporting sales for a while. So selling, being a vendor to the legal industry, which was a good marriage of that. Then I became a trainer because I became the best salesperson in the company. So I started training other salespeople. You'll notice a pattern here. Then I became a professional coach, and I did legal professional development for legal professionals, including attorneys. So again, marriage of the things that I like. Then I started a speed dating business. We can talk about that. Then I did marketing for law firms. So combining the legal background and the marketing and business development experience that I had. And then 13 or so years ago, I left and started my current business. So it's been a little.
Like, okay. We'll get to some of this, not all of it, but I feel like if I don't at least run through this, it won't echo what you just talked about. This, you don't know this yet, but I mean, none of them are going to be a surprise to you. You want to see the list I have from Ashley?
Oh yes, I would love that. Okay. Oh my God.
And then I'll decide later which ones we want to follow up on.
Okay.
I'm not outing anything. I've got an amazing person on my team that runs my team that does all this heavy lifting for me. But I'm going to out this list right now.
I was so curious what she was going to find. I listened to your other interviews and I was like, what are they going to know about me?
Okay, good. You've done your homework. And we actually did ours. This is just under the fun facts section. Okay. Used to have 2 pet skunks. 2024 launched a 1-woman play. I got to ask you about that. Yeah. Went to a modeling school as a teenager, marathon runner, completed Ironmans, summited. Oh, that just ended up with a B in there. I was like, was it a paper? How did you submit that? Anyway, you summited Mount Kilimanjaro. What else do we have here? Founded and ran the largest speed dating. We just talked about that. In Peru, sandboarded down the largest dune. Was on MTV's Remote Control in college. I love that show, by the way. We're just scratching the surface, I suppose. But,
yeah.
But I think that's you, right? But like that, the reason why I wanted to do that, one, throw all those things out there, because I don't get to do that usually. You're lucky again with a guest if you have 1 or 2 of those things. Most of us haven't done all of those type of things. But I mean, what does that say about you? Is it free spirit? Is it always looking for an adventure? Is it what is it?
It's so part of it is the free spirit and adventure piece, and part of it, quite frankly, is really my why for why I do what I do around the no regrets idea. Right, I'm an embodiment of my no regrets philosophy, and the reason I do that is when I was 4. And I'm living in Southern Ohio. My brother, who was 12 at the time, was killed in a car accident, my brother Daniel. And So I feel like, nobody knew that day that it was going to be his last day in this realm. And I feel like he didn't get a chance to live his life. And so I feel like if we're here and we have the opportunity, then we have an opportunity, perhaps even an obligation, to do everything we can to live our lives to the fullest. And so I feel like I've been, pregnant women say they're eating for two. I feel a lot like I'm living for two. Like I get to do the things Daniel didn't get to do. So then I say, yeah, take me, let's go. Should we do this trip? Hell yeah, let's go do that.
I mean, it's such a healthy way to live life. I want to let everybody know that I was talking to LeeAnn beforehand about a trip I've got coming up to Costa Rica, and she gave me a bungee jumping suggestion, and I'm like, yeah, I don't do those kind of things, but clearly she does. I am all for the message that you just said without scaring the living heck out of myself. Yeah. You've got a stomach for it, obviously, but what a beautiful way to live your life every day since your brother's passing. And that's, a lifetime ago, right? I mean, those of us at our age right now, we're in the same age range.
Yeah.
We remember those young years, but it's a different life. And so to be able to carry him with you, I've got to imagine is, a lot of people are looking for purpose and motivation and all that, and it never stops. And hopefully you find it and you keep going down that journey. But to have him with you that whole way has to be truly something unique that you've carried with you your whole life.
It really is. And it's interesting, part of my show is based around that, because my show is based around how do you take these things that are bad things or experience that you've had that some would label as negative, and how do you actually pull the uniqueness from that so that you can use it as developing your own unique self and your own unique point of view. And so I feel like he's been with me the whole time, and he's part of my gut instinct, and he shows up for me. Like, he has this really funny way of showing up, which actually, I think that the day that this is going to be released is the anniversary of the day that he passed.
Wow.
And so it's like, so he does, he just pops in like that. Yeah. And it's really, I find it really cool and inspiring, because it means that there's, I'm not alone, even if I'm alone.
So March 4th, was that?
Yeah, it was 1973. Yeah, it was actually March 3rd, 1973.
March 3rd. So the day after. I mean, this will be the day after. So as this is listening, and I don't know. I mean, that's pretty cool too, that we're sitting here talking about him now. What? 52 years later.
52 years later. Yeah.
52 years later.
Yeah.
And I mean, in looking through your background too, I mean, he was, from what I understand it, I mean, he was your go-to, right? I mean, you guys grew up in a tough situation with a father who was an alcoholic, a mom who was bipolar. I'm just curious how all of that shaped you, because, look, we hear about this. Sometimes kids need to grow up fast, and I've got to imagine that was in some way your, what you were dealing with, right? And especially in losing your brother in the midst of all that.
Yeah, well, my parents divorced when I was 3, so that, add that notch in there. And what I learned from that, and let's be real, I didn't piece all of this together until like a few years ago, right? Right. Not like I knew right away, but I realized early on that I had to look after myself, and especially once he passed, everyone kind of went inward to deal with their own selves, which makes sense. I mean, it was the 70s, we were a poor family. Nobody had counseling. Nobody talked about their feelings. Like, just wasn't what we did at the time. And so my 4-year-old self was like, oh, okay, I'm going to have to fend for myself here. And so I became extraordinarily resilient. I'm very crafty. I've got MacGyver skills. Like, you can drop me somewhere with like, a piece of gum and like a nail file, and I'll find my way out. Like,
because you had to.
Yeah, because I had to. And so some people would look at that as like something that drags them down. But again, part of the work that I do is to say like, no, that's really cool that I figured that out early, and I can take that anywhere. And that's very empowering for anything that I attempt in life.
Yeah. So tell me how you got to here, because now, like, and I would encourage everybody to go to LeeAnn's website, LeeAnnMarieWebster.com. We'll have it in the show notes, but you've got a lot going on. Everybody always says to me, you got so much going on, that not more than a lot of the other people that have a lot going on. And you are one of them. How did you get to this phase of your life and your business, which I think, and you tell me where I'm right or wrong here. The what's the right word I'm looking for? Adventure seeker, the need for finding something new, I think will always be there for you if I'm understanding that. But yet at the same time, it feels like you found where you need to be.
100%. And part of what my journey has been about is because a lot of these things are seemingly random, right? Like a lawyer, a speed dating thing, and a coach. What is she doing? My brother, who's a mechanical engineer, does not understand, by the way.
Nor should he.
Nor should he. And when I kind of took a step back and looked at it, it was like, oh, wait a second. The through thread is being open to experience. The through thread is following my heart and not being tied down by an identity or by what I should be doing. The through thread is helping to inspire other people and help them to learn lessons and help them to empower themselves with creating what they want to create. So that's how I got kind of to today. And, my thought is, especially once we cross that 50s line, we have that sensation that the runway ahead is shorter than the runway behind. And that's what has a lot of people then taking stock and saying, well, what have I been doing? Has this been for me? Is this what I want? How do I do this? I've always wanted to X. And so I'm all about empowering you to make the rest of your runway however you want it to be, instead of relying on what it has been.
There's a lot in there too first off, I would say that there's message in there for anybody of any age, but I think when you're in your 20s, 30s, you don't know what you don't know. And in many ways, that's a great thing too.
Yeah.
Right. And then you start to know what you know, and it's very liberating when we get into our 50s, yet are we willing to try new things? Are we willing to get out of what is safe because it's always been safe to us? And so, like I met you on Michelle Villalobos's retreat, and that was not a safe thing for me to do. I mean, it was, you know what I mean? Like it was doing something different. I wasn't uncomfortable. It just was out of my,
right.
Does that make sense? I wasn't uncomfortable, but yet it was out of my comfort zone, right? 100%. I never felt uncomfortable, but I would have been easier just not to do it. And so I think that, it's easier to play it safe in our 50s, 60s. And in a lot of ways we've earned the right to do that, to have that security. Yet you have unlocked something that I think is really powerful for someone in our age range. And also we should focus too. I mean, this is Women's History Month, and how many women, I can't tell you how many women that I'm friends with that for one reason or another lost the passion. Maybe some of them stayed home to take care of kids. A lot didn't. But then suddenly, once that's over and they want something and they want to get back, they're so far removed from it, they don't know where to turn. Right. So there's a really strong message here, I think, for women, for everyone, but certainly for women too. And I'm curious what you say to all those people, whether it's a woman that's 40 that wants to get back into the work world, or has had the same job and hates it, or whatever, right. Or someone in their 50s that figures they're probably done and suddenly could use that spark. It's really empowering, I think. Yeah,
thank you. It's that's the crux of what I do, right? Especially with women, because we do take on a lot of roles. We're, a mother, a spouse, insert the career line if that's been your path. And we tend to, and all of us tend to do this. I think women, though, tend to especially say, well, I'm an X, so I can't Y. And I've always been that. And then what I always say is step back and decide, like, okay, great, you've been an X. Do you really want to be an X? Do you want to keep being an X, or has that been, this is the path and now you want to try something different? But it's tuning into what is it really in you and in your heart, not what others expect of you or what others want you to do. And that can be hard, because everyone around you is invested in having you be how you've been. And it can be hard if you want to make a bigger shift around that.
So you've found it. And I think I'll just speak for everybody to say, I don't know if we ever fully find it, because you're constantly looking, you're constantly tweaking, right? It's like the greatest of athletes or performers. They know that there's never perfection, but you strive for it. But I think that your club, you have a feeling of an idea of what that looks like now, because you found something you love. You found something where you can continue to challenge yourself and others. And it's not just a defined, I don't think we want to be putting LeeAnn in a box, because that's not the way that you're wired. And so you have this chance to explore. And I think that what part of that exploration and what you did, collecting data, stories, however we want to say it, from other people, had to have really done something for you, because you don't know what you're getting every single time. So explain to me what that project was, how it came about, what it means, because I think, to me, when I found out you did this, it was one of the most interesting things that I had ever heard in terms of a project, and in part just because of what it does in connecting with humanity. That's just my take, but tell everybody about that.
Thank you. Well, it's still going. So if you see me speak in person, I'll have you do these cards. I call them regret release cards. And so they're postcards, and I walk you through an exercise about how to release.
Hold that up again for me, LeeAnn, so I could read it. A lot of people will listen, they won't see it on YouTube, but it says, "You only live once, but if you do it right, once is enough." Looks like a quote from Mae West.
Yeah.
And then on the back is essentially a postcard to fill out.
Yes. And so this is how I collect. One way that I collect regrets. I've collected over 1,000 now. The other way I collect them is I will go sometimes. If you're in Chicago, you'll see me around, and I'll put out a little table that says, "What do you regret?" And then there's an option for people to write it, and then just put anonymously. It's all anonymous into the bowl. And I do this for a couple reasons. One is I have found that people are often carrying around a regret, and they don't even realize it. But and regrets aren't bad. I mean, they actually are indicative of what we value. You wouldn't regret something if you didn't value whatever that was about. But what happens is, in the way they get harmful, is when we feel shame, when we feel guilt, when we don't take a chance because the last time we spoke up in a meeting, we got shot down. And so we never speak up in the meeting again, or you feel a sense of guilt. So I started collecting these because I wanted to give people an easy way to tap into that, but also to release it, like in a very sensory way. And what I get is crazy. Like I pulled 3 today. If you want, I can share them with you.
The question was coming, so you were ready for it, even though you didn't know. Maybe you had an idea.
I was ready.
Yeah.
So I also just love sharing them. So the first one says, "I regret not realizing my parents were just figuring it out sooner," which is, sweet, right? Like, and our parents were, I'm holding it up, all doing the best we can. Not answering a phone call from my friend at 9:53 a.m. They hit a tree at 9:58 a.m. and she died along with her 10-year-old and her husband.
And these are just strangers sharing it.
Strangers. I'm not going to Hawaii when I had the chance at age 20. I've yet to go, and I'm almost 50.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, let me ask you a few questions on this.
Yeah.
Let me go back. What was the goal with this? How did the idea spark in your head, and then what were the hopes and goals?
Yeah. So it was originally inspired by something called Post Secret, which is, there's a couple books, and that's where people submit their own postcards to an address, and they release a secret. They tell somebody a secret. And I thought that was a cool idea. And I was, you're a speaker, I'm a speaker. I was like, what's some interesting tactile way that I can bring home this idea of regret instead of just talking about it? And so I thought, well, let's try this. I'll print up these postcards and I'll write it. I'll receive them. So part of it was just, let's have a way for people to do it. But what it has become is a real live tap on what my audiences really do regret. So I'm starting to see patterns now. It's my own research. And then I'm also seeing that people don't realize that this is present for them, and there's energy to unlock with it. And so if people can just go through that simple act of writing it down and giving it to somebody else, literally giving it up, then I find that it frees something in them, and it starts them, and usually a relationship that they have, on a different trajectory.
To me, it's so fascinating, because you could do this for the rest of your life, and I don't think you'd get bored with it. I don't know that you will, but you know what I'm saying? Like, you never run out. And there are a couple things I want to talk about here. One is more just sort of like nerdy content guy business side of me, but I'm just curious what reading through these does for you, because it'd be easy for me to say, oh, it must uplift you, but there's a lot of heavy stuff in there that probably hits you really hard too, or sparks some things in you. Like what are the emotions like, and what, if any, toll do they take on you going through this whole process?
Yeah, it's such a great question. So I have a ritual that I take with them. So, I lived in California for years, so I'm allowed to be a little wooey. So, so when I collect them, I sage them. You burn the sage thing. So I sage them. I sit in my living room. I read through all of them because I want to give each of them attention and time and energy. And then I sage them, and then I have a special place where I keep them. And that's to kind of honor the person and honor what they've given up. But then also saging myself so that I don't take it on. Because I look at it, I'm kind of like a facilitator, right? Like I let somebody realize something, help them transmute it, and then it doesn't stay with them or with me because of a process that I have for it.
For me, it's a little wooey, but
okay.
I get it too. Like it doesn't feel right just to take it, write it down, and throw it out. I mean, like someone, even if it took 1 minute, like someone opened their heart.
Yeah.
And isn't that amazing to you that so many people are willing to do that? And I think really, I don't know, it kind of gives me a little bit of hope too.
The first time I did this, I thought, well, they've known me for whatever the 10 minutes or whatever I've been on stage so far. Like I'm going to get the, that I ate 2 chocolate chip cookies, or, you know what I mean? And there's always 1 or 2 of those. I thought it would just be really light things. And I was floored when I got something like the one that I read a minute ago with the text from the friend and that they didn't answer. And I've had people stop me in the parking lot and say, tell me similar stories. And the fact that I can help someone feel comfortable enough to release something that deep, to me, is amazing and beautiful. And I really want to honor that.
And it shows up in keynotes and breakout sessions and workshops and really all is such a gift, I think, to people to find out more about themselves, to dig deeper here, to as you say, no regrets, no limits, how to achieve the big goals that really matter. From a business standpoint for you, like I'm lucky. I feel like this, between this podcast and baseball and all the people I meet, there's content every day, more than I know what to do with. And, a lot of times the problem for a lot of people that are speakers or doing whatever these creative things are, is that it's hard to come up with content. Well, for me, with amazing guests like you, I get to connect with all these people that have all these interesting stories and motivation. You're doing that every time you get a card back too. Tell me just about, because, and I know you've done a lot of this already, I'm not trying to give away secrets, but for the entrepreneurs out there, like what I've been telling people as I've been on my journey of speaking, 8 years ago, I was about to say just a TV broadcaster. It was plenty enough. It was great. It still is. And then I found the speaking thing through a suggestion, and that was going to lead me to books, but I was told to do a podcast, which then led to books and newsletters and blogging, and we're just getting started, which with some bigger projects and some things that I want to work on in the next couple of years. What have just these cards and these stories done for you in terms of possibilities and spin-offs?
Yeah. Well, so part of it is it's helped me get really clear about how I can support people and the journey that I can take them on. And part of it is the book. So we'll come back to the book in a minute.
Yes.
One of my clients saw me speak, and we went through this exercise, and she realized just by doing this exercise that she had been carrying this regret about her nephew. They had gotten in this bad argument. He's an adult. And within a year, or within a week of them getting this bad argument, he was killed in just a freak accident. And she had this regret that the last conversation they had was an argument. And, then he died not knowing how she felt about him and all that. And so, and this wasn't conscious for her, right? She wasn't like thinking about it every day. She'd think about him, but she didn't realize the weight of it. Well, on the way home from seeing me speak, she called her sister, his mother, They had a conversation. The sister forgave her, and they talked about something they hadn't talked about in years, and it started their relationship on a whole different trajectory. And so that to me is the power of what I'm doing. And then the next layer of it is she was stepping into being the first female president of her bank. And so relieving that kind of pressure valve, kind of taking that monkey off her back, if you will, gave her more energy to step more powerfully into this new role, because she didn't have that kind of guilt holding her back. You know, it's like a weight a lot of times. And so that is like, okay, that this is what I do, right? This is how do you take the past and help it fuel your future? How do you not get stuck in the past, but find the power in it, and then say, okay, this is going to help propel me if I use it as fuel instead of using it as like an anchor.
I've got to think that moment among many was just validation, confirmation for you to say, oh, this is why I do what I do.
100%. Because you know how it is. Like you speak sometimes, and like, you know, you'll get the little surveys, and people are like, "It's great," you know, or somebody will come up to you afterwards, and it's like, "Okay, that's great." And did I make any lasting impact?
Yeah.
That to me is like, holy cannoli, like that changed her life. Yeah.
Totally. I was going to say, well, we don't have to have those, but actually, I think we do. I mean, we'll be fine without them, but when you get them, the amount of energy that gives. That's the stuff that gets you through the tough times, right? And because you're going to have your down times. I had somebody the other day say, life is good until it's not,
right?
And then until it is again. I mean, you don't know.
Yeah.
The regrets you're talking about, you don't know what's going to happen today. I had somebody at a speech I was doing last week, and I had talked during the speech about finding meaning in your work, and he came up to me and he goes, "So how do you find your purpose?" And I love it. It's like, you know, people come up, you're signing a book afterwards, or you're doing meet and greet, and it's usually like, "Hey, I love just what you said. I love this," or "Hey," but it was like, I love that. You know, how do you find your purpose? And I thought, I'm like, that's such a good, deep question. And
yeah.
And I said, you know, I don't know that there's a formula to it, but I think you got to be paying attention. If you pay attention to your interactions, if you pay attention to what you're doing and who it affects, and you're curious and you're listening, you'll get that feedback. But you have to have your eyes and ears open for it. And if you're paying attention to it, which is, you know, you've been intentional about that card forces you to pay attention to it. Not that you weren't, but it gives you that evidence. But it's not going to be that easy for everyone else. You've got to poke around. You got to be a little bit curious, and you've got to pay attention instead of going through the motions. And unless you're working for yourself and nobody else, and nothing that you do helps anyone else, okay, I don't know if I can help you there, but for the most part, you are, even if it's work you don't like, right? I always start with this. Let's begin with the fact that you're getting a paycheck, whether it's the fair amount or not the fair amount. You're doing it first and foremost to take care of yourself, your family. Okay, if that's all it is, then that's some motivation. But now, if you could find something else, it may not be your dream job either. It doesn't have to be, but look for those little wins, and they generally tend to start to paint the picture. That's my take on it, at least.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I think it's the key to that is like just going internal and paying really close attention to what you do and don't like. And also keeping in mind, it doesn't have to be some big thing, right? Like I always tell people, I've got all these Ironman and Kilimanjaro and all this, and your big thing could be being the best father, mother, whatever that you can be. Yeah. It could be raising the best child you can raise. It could be being the best leader of your team or being the best team member. Like that's cool too.
Yep.
It's being intentional about it.
Yeah. Okay. Before I get to the baseball theme questions, one, let's talk about possible book title. You said you got working on a little something there.
Oh yeah, I've got the book title. It's okay. So what I'm doing is I've collected a lot of these. So I'm going to have about 80 of them selected, and it's called "That's Regrettable: Releasing the Past to Fuel Your Future."
Ooh, I love it. I love it.
Thank you. So I'll have these handwritten postcards and what I've been collecting from people, as well as some tips about how do you apply it. And what do you do with it now that this has been uncovered?
So good. So good. And then the thing I love about your website, it's so easy you've made it easy for people to connect to, some of this stuff gets to me to be too overcomplicated.
Yeah.
So that's a good way for me to say, you told me you've got an offer. I don't know what it is. I have an idea, but I know it'll be good. So tell me about that, because I think that for anyone listening, if you go to LeeAnn's website, I think that's where we'll do it, right?
We'll do it there. Actually, I have a special URL just for this piece.
Oh,
if you
perfect.
want.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, it's on regretreleasemethod.com. And so what that will walk you through is just the process that I do. It's a very simple, like 5-step process for identifying regret, releasing it, and then how do you use that to take action afterwards.
Okay. Regret release.
Method.com.
Method.com.
Yep.
Okay. I am going to make sure that's in the show notes. And easy too. I mean, I just as simple. I think it's as simple as, what you do with the cards and everything too. I mean, and I think that's the key to some of this too, is because for anyone that's running a business like this, that's, everybody tells you to grow your database, Well, that becomes easier said. That is easier said than done. It becomes easier when I think you make it easy on people.
Make it easy on people, and also tune into doing things that you feel inspired by and that feel fun for you to execute. Like,
not just doing it.
Yeah, like that table that I did it. I live close enough to be. Sorry, I know it's not your team, but near Wrigley Field in Chicago.
You don't have to apologize.
And so I took my table out there because it was like, well, this will be interesting. I was as much interested not just in what people would write, but how they'd even interact with the table. And that was fascinating. Some people came right over as if they've been waiting all day to get this off their chest. Some people went so far away from the table, you would have thought that there was poison on it. Some people brought their friends, some people didn't. So to me, that was just a fun, interesting way to even get this energy out there. And so that makes it all the more enjoyable, and I'm doing everything in my business, right? And that's what I think. Find those things that are interesting and fun for you to execute. So you're not just doing it because somebody said you should be doing it.
Great place to set up, by the way, Wrigley Field. I mean, come on. And I think it's cool too. It reminds me of some of these, like, I don't know, when people can do something sort of anonymous, I guess. I mean, it's not totally, but even like you look at so much of the TikToks and the videos that are out there now, it's like people will kind of gravitate towards the table or the camera, maybe out of curiosity to start. I'm not really sure. Yeah. And then as long as it's not something that, and maybe what it is too is like there's a curiosity and there's a, wait, are they not trying to sell me a phone?
Right.
Like, can I walk into Costco and not have every service sold to me? So like, we're programmed now for that. So it's like, oh, wait a minute, I could do this. And okay, this is easy. I don't know. I've got to think there's a lot of curiosity to it.
I think there's that. And I'm starting now to interview people after they release the regret, and not everyone wants to be on camera, and that's cool, but to ask them, like, why did you stop? And see if they'll talk about it a little bit.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to the baseball themed questions. Okay. Are you a Reds fan then? Or are you a Cubs fan?
You know what? I grew up a Reds fan.
Yeah, I figured.
And a Tigers fan. I actually went to the original stadium that they had, 40 years ago before they built the current one. So yeah.
All right. I was just curious.
Cubs now though. Sorry.
Cubs now. Well, you're right down the street. So yeah. Why not? That's a fun thing. Okay. What's the biggest home run that you've hit professionally in your career?
Got to be the speed dating. I was the first person to host a speed dating event outside of the Jewish community. And I ended up creating the largest speed dating company in Southern California. And we were on national television. We were in the LA Times. We were like, it was the right idea at the right time, which was amazing.
Yeah. I guess speed dating still exists.
It does. Oh yeah. Right? Mm-hmm.
I've just not been single for over 25 years. So I never knew what that was. I was last single before the internet. Well, internet was just starting, but you get the point. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's super cool. What is the biggest swing and miss you've taken, and what did you learn from it? I've got to think with your fearlessness, there are a lot of swings and misses.
A lot of swings and misses. Yeah. The biggest one is the first time I attempted to do the full Ironman. So for those who aren't familiar, Ironman triathlon is long form, so 2.4 mile swim, 112-mile bike and 26.2-mile run, full marathon, all in one day. And the first time I attempted, I did the whole swim, I did the whole bike, but I didn't make the bike cutoff, so they wouldn't let me run.
Oh.
And it was like, you train for a year for that thing. And so to have that be just pulled out, I didn't have a file for that. And so to have that happen was crushing at the time. Spoiler alert, I did go back and get my medal, but that's a story for a different day. but the biggest lesson I learned from it was, I'm sure you see this in the space that you're in too, that oftentimes we're taught, don't focus on the negative, focus only on the positive. And we don't want to have negative feelings. And while I agree that you want to be intentional because what you focus on does grow, what I learned in my life is you don't want to subvert actually something that appears to be negative. And so for that Ironman, the first time they were like, you need to know the cutoffs. And I'm like, I don't need to know the cutoffs. I'm not going to have to worry about the cutoffs. That's not going to be my thing. And I wouldn't let myself have a plan for what if things didn't go right. And then when things started not going right, I was like off the rails because I didn't know what to do. And I didn't know where the cutoff was. And I didn't know how to handle it. And I hadn't planned for it. And so what I learned for the second time that got me across the finish line was, how do I just say, okay, I don't think it's going to happen, but what if I can't eat? I get a flat tire, this, that, the other. And having the plan in my head took a lot of stress away, because then it wasn't like, oh my God, this happened, what do I do? It was, oh, this happened, I know what to do.
Yeah. Well, there's something about, if you experience it, that's why I say repetition is so important. Now, you can only do so many of those competitions, right? You can't do them every day and over again. But once you do it, you get a little something. And so, like, when people say to me, and maybe to you, like, do you get nervous when you speak? And I'm going to guess that if you do, it's some of those butterflies beforehand, and then you get going because you know what it looks like. And everybody's a little different with that. I'm not a butterfly guy for the most part. They'll come every now and then. I'll be like, I wonder why that's there. But I know that it's not a bad thing. And some people need to pace up and down and rehearse, and some people that makes them that would make me nervous. But I think once you do it, you figure out what works for you and what doesn't work for you, and then you keep that. Hopefully, you store that in the Rolodex, and it works.
Yeah. Well, that, and you can also understand what's under it, right? So instead of being like, oh, I'm so nervous about getting up on stage, it's like, whoo, I'm feeling kind of excited. Why am I so excited? Oh my God, I'm going to deliver my message to, 400 people, 1,000 people, or whatever. That's kind of cool.
How cool is that?
Yeah.
Last one for a baseball themed question, small ball. What are the little things that add up to big results for you?
I really believe little seemingly innocuous things like releasing a regret can have a huge impact, because they're little things that you don't realize that might be kind of taking your energy. And like I said, being that kind of anchor that holds you down. And so if you can find a way to get the little things off your back, it frees up exponentially more energy than it was holding.
Yeah, I love that. All right, time for 4 final questions as we round the bases. So now I've got to pick from my list of more than 4 things, but we already crossed off some of them.
Okay.
Or you referenced the speed dating. So let's start with 2 pet skunks, one as a kid and one as a law student. You're the first person I've met.
Yeah, I love it.
All right, where did this come from?
From my dad being an oddball, basically. I'm allergic to cats, and he didn't want a dog. And somehow in Portsmouth, Ohio, he decided, sure, skunk. That's the next logical thing. They sold them in the pet store. You get them when they're like 6 weeks old. They're just little tiny things. They're descented, and they train to a litter box. So I think that's part of what was attractive to him, was you can kind of train it so you don't have to like be taking it out all the time.
And how was that relationship with you and the skunks?
I still think about my little guy.
Like any other pet, right?
Like any other pet. Yeah. They're kind of I think a nice mix, because they're a little independent, but they're also very cuddly. And so they're cool little guys.
What were their names, by the way?
Jasper was the one that I had when I was young, and then Stinky was the one that
Stinky. right.
I'm laughing because my brother was like, "Oh, that took all the creativity of a 3-year-old." I'm
Yeah,
like, "Hey, I don't know."
Okay. Second question, as we round the bases, a one-woman play. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I'll show you the playbill.
So cool.
It's called Fancy Meeting Me Here. It's, the idea behind it was the seed of the idea came when somebody said, one of my coaches said, "What are you doing for fun? You do all these things for your birthday. What are you doing for fun?" And that started me on the inquiry of, well, if I, what do I love to do? I'd love to do a million things. I'm already a speaker, but then I remembered I did this comedic storytelling slot in a friend's a variety show on a whim. So not stand up, but comedic storytelling. And I'm like, that was so much fun. How do I do more of that? And then I started doing the moth and things. And then people my whole life have said, "You're so inspiring. You have all these stories. You should write a book." And I was like, yeah, okay, write a book. But then I thought, well, what if I did a one-woman show? That would be way more fun, way more interesting, and a unique and other way to do it. I've got no theater background, Joel. This was like sure, why not? And 2 years later, there you go. I've got a show.
So cool. Do you get nervous for that?
I do, but I channel the energy. But this is different from a keynote. With the keynote, like I have a PowerPoint, and with the keynote, I probably say the same thing 90% of the time, 95% of the time.
Yeah.
But with a show, you've got to be like on your spot saying the same thing for the light to change. Like it has to be memorized. You can't riff. And so that was a little interesting. But what I learned from it was, I used to be very like, I don't want to memorize things because I want to be natural on stage and all of that. But what I learned is there's a bell curve, and the bell curve is like, sounds rehearsed, trying. And then you get to the other side where it's in you. And if you think about like your favorite song, you sing your favorite song, you don't have to think like, what's the next line? If you can get to that point, then it's magical.
Yeah. And it's, I guess the sweet spot is having everything down pat, but still just sounding completely authentic, conversational, right? I mean, and I always try to lean towards that side, but then I might forget something, or I might, and of course in the one woman play, you can't. Yeah.
Well, it's how can I have it so in me that I can just be super present? Because I tell the story about my brother in depth, and I talk about what that was like in our family, and I kind of am acting out different vignettes from my life. And it's like, if my brain isn't worried about what to say, then I can be in that moment as I'm delivering it. And that really connects me to it.
Yep. I totally get that. Okay. Third question as we round the bases, remote control in college. I mean, anyone that's our age remembers all those great MTV shows, right?
Yeah.
what was that experience like?
It was so much fun. My premiered, I think it was 1988. I want to say 88. We lived in the dorm, and we would watch Remote Control, and then Top 10 Video Countdown, and on Saturday night, Hair Bangers Ball, once we got back from the bars.
You mean they're bars at Ohio University? I've been there. I know.
Yeah, I know. a couple.
Just a couple.
And so they announced that they were doing a contestant search in Columbus, and so my friend and I drove up and tried out. We were first in line, we did the whole thing, but she didn't get on, and I did, and then we had to drive back to Athens, and it was like oh my God, I'm going to be on Remote Control. I can't believe I'm going to be on Remote Control. This is so amazing. And then I'd look at her and I'm like, I'm really sorry. They suck. I can't believe they didn't pick you. That was terrible. So.
Those are the good old days, only because I don't really know what the shows are anymore, but we all watched that stuff back then.
Yeah. So, it was my first time going to New York too, when they flew me out, and then and I got to be on it. I actually posted a photo of me with Colin Quinn, because he was the co-host so many years ago. So it was a blast. I did not win. Spoiler alert, I came in second.
Okay.
But whatever.
It's all right. We'll forever have been on the show.
That's right.
All right. Final question to walk off. I'll go a little bit heavy here, but hopefully with a learning lesson. I'll ask you what you ask everybody else. What is your regret?
Well, one of my regrets that I didn't even realize I had until I started doing this work was, I talked about my brother Daniel who died. That day he was with my oldest brother Jim, and the two of them were off riding their bikes together. And Jim got out of the way, didn't get hit. Daniel did get hit. Jim passed away years ago, and we never ever had a conversation about that day. Never. And his life, was a little tragic in some ways. And I can't help but think that he felt responsible for it, because he's the one who said, let's go to my friend's house in the first place. Daniel died in his arms. And I just can't believe that we never ever spoke about it. And what a weight he must have been carrying to never have talked about it to anyone in the family. And I really wish that I would have had that conversation with him.
So how does that change you today? I would imagine it makes you, maybe if you're hesitant to have any type of meaningful conversation with someone, just do it. Just do it. And actually I've had a conversation with my other brother, Steve, about it. We didn't talk about it for most of my life, but I now talk with him about it. We call each other now on his birthday or on, the anniversary of the day that it happened. And we've never talked about it for 40 some years. So you unleashed something there. You released something there.
Yeah.
It's powerful. That's what you get with LeeAnn and with all of her programs and the speaking and the book coming and she's probably about to start composing a symphony as well or something. I don't know. You'll be. I'm not ruling anything out. I just know that you will be finding more challenges, because that's who you are. In the best of ways. I want to encourage everybody again to go to the website, LeeAnn Marie Webster, LeeAnn Marie, LeeAnnMarieWebster.com. We'll have it in the show notes. This is so great. I'm so excited to share your story with everybody. There's so much inspiration. You're doing so much good out there, and it's inspiring to me to be able to watch and to be able to learn from you as well. So thank you so much for spending time today on the podcast.
My pleasure. It's been an absolute ball. Thank you.
Everybody knows Joe Goldberg. It's around the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg.